Dan Galushin. Welcome to another edition of Dan's Fishing Tales. I got some tips for you on fishing roadrunners under a float. And I'm talking about the small roadrunners like this panfish roadrunner. Now I've got it set on a float, and it depends on the depth. And I use these type of floats here. You can also use a rattling float if you want to add a little bit different type of attraction. Those are Betts floats. That's a weighted float. It has a weight down here on the bottom, and that works real good for when you're using something like this real lightweight roadrunner. Now, fishing these under a float, how would you do that? I mean, normally you're going to take this and you're going to cast it out with an ultralight, and you're going to bring it along real slow and kind of pump it and let that blade flutter, or just reel it along real slow, maybe with like my finger jigging technique that I use. Well, under a float, can you do any of that? Yes, you can. Set it at a depth, but remember this, it's going to be down like this, but if you're going to reel this, it's going to come up like this. So you're going to be going up further. So you're going to have to set it down a little bit deeper, and however much the rate is of speed that you're going to be using, how that's going to come up. The blade will turn, just like that. Can you use my finger jigging technique doing it? Yes, you can. And then you can really see what it's doing, because as you're using your finger and it's hitting your finger and it's bouncing with that rhythm that it gives it, you can see the float. Boom, 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 boom. And that float all the time is doing the same thing. It's hopping that jig down below and turning the blade. Now, another technique that I have used, and it seems like it works very, very well when the water really is getting colder, or it's just at the brink of warming up, depending on if you're really late winter or really early spring, just whatever you do there. But if the fish are really, really slow, bring that float along. And this technique a lot of times works with a real light chop on the water or smooth. And that's to pull it. And you can tell the distance by pulling the float. Because what that does is, okay, you got your lure down here and you got your float. You pull it, the lure comes up, stop, goes back down. Pull it, stop. So what you can do is you pull it a long distance, and then it'll flutter back down. That blade's fluttering up and down, and also this way. So then it stops, and then you pull it up. It's a lot of times, especially with the crappies, because you know they look upward, that'll start falling down and fluttering, and it stops. And you'll see your float will be what they call a lift bite, really. The float might go to the side, or the fish might take it and go to the side, and the float, watch your float, because that's going to detect the strike for you. And there's times when you will pick it up, just come up like this. As you're doing it though, it's like, do you hang into something? Not necessarily. Definitely watch that float, because if all of a sudden it starts going this way or this way, you got a fish. And because when you're fishing it like that, like I said, where you're pulling it, letting it drop, pulling it, they'll hit either way, up or, but normally, as it just sits there like that, they don't hit it at that time. But if they're extremely slow, I mean just not wanting to hit hardly anything, there are times when you let it fall, just sit there a couple of seconds before you pull it again, because they might hit it. And one of the things is if you've got like this kicking crappie on there, when it's like that, definitely have some kicking crappie on. But have a wax worm or a crappie nibble. I use a crappie nibble usually. And if that sits down like that, and you let it set a couple of seconds, a lot of times they'll be sitting there looking at it, and they'll grab it. Like I said, you can reel along, but here's another thing you can do. If there's a heavier chop on the water, and this is a little bit different with a roadrunner, but it will work. You use that chop on the water to do your jigging. Your float is up here, your jig's down here, okay, it's going along like this. Well, what's happening, and I've been able to watch this in clear, really clear water, so I know what happens, is as this is doing it with a heavy chop, that jig's coming up and down, and that blade is fluttering. It's not just sitting there still. It's actually fluttering, especially on a roadrunner. Now you can do this with a little bit bigger roadrunners. You don't necessarily have to be this panfish type. But normally when you're doing it, it is a time when you're going to be using an ice fishing jig of some sort. And those will work through the ice. I don't fish them really that much through there. I suppose if I did, I might catch more. I've got regular ice jigs that I use. Anyhow, this is how to do it in the open water under a float like that. Because when I'm ice fishing, I don't use floats. I'm one of these straight line guys. Keeps me in touch, as I say, with my soft plastic fishing and regular lure fishing in the open water season, because you're detecting the strike actually through the rod just like you would in any open water situation. But anyway, I wanted to bring some of these tips to you as to how you could fish a roadrunner under a float. So until next time, get out on the water and enjoy a great day of fishing.